Welcome back. Thanks for joining me again. In this lesson, we're going to talk about CloudFront and Route 53. We're going to go through CloudFront definitions, we'll talk about CloudFront basics, and we'll look at how to use Route 53 with CloudFront. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our definition for CloudFront. So what is CloudFront? The essentials definition is that CloudFront is an AWS service that replicates data, video, and applications around the world to reduce latency, so that access to these resources is fast for the people who will use them the most. So essentially, we have a set of data and we have users that might be in various locations around the world. We make that data available to CloudFront, and CloudFront replicates that data to these various locations as users access the data. And then CloudFront replicates that data to these locations. So as the users are accessing that data, they're able to get access to that data with the lowest possible latency. So our AWS definition is that Amazon CloudFront is a web service that speeds up distribution of your static and dynamic web content, such as HTML, CSS, JS, and image files to your users. CloudFront delivers your content through a worldwide network of data centers called edge locations. When a user requests content that you're serving with CloudFront, the user is routed to the edge location that provides the lowest latency, so that content is delivered with the best possible performance. If the content is already in the edge location with the lowest latency, CloudFront delivers it immediately. If the content is not in that edge location, CloudFront retrieves it from the origin that you've defined, such as an S3 bucket. So basically, you select the edge location. That data can be pre-replicated to an edge location. If the data is not in the edge location when a user goes to access it for the first time, the data is retrieved from that source and replicated to the edge location. That way, subsequent access to that data will happen from the edge location. And the data is kept in that edge location for a period of 24 hours. So this map shows you CloudFront locations that are located in various parts of the world. So let's take a look at a little bit more about how CloudFront works. So to create a CloudFront distribution for S3, the first thing we'd want to do is to upload the data that we want to distribute to our S3 bucket. In order for users to be able to access the data using a CloudFront URL, you have to explicitly grant public read permissions to each object within the bucket. So in order to set up your CloudFront distribution point, you're going to go to the CloudFront console. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select CloudFront. We're on the CloudFront dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and click Create Distribution. Now, we're able to select what type of distribution we want. You have a web-based distribution, which allows you to do web-based files. You can make those files available using HTTP or HTTPS. You can add, update, delete objects and submit web forms, and you can use live streams in real time. You also have the option to distribute with RTMP. RTMP distributions speed up distribution of your media files using Adobe Flash Media Server's RTMP protocol. So we're just looking right now to do an overview of CloudFront. So we're just going to click Get Started on a web distribution. And on our distribution page, we would walk through and provide the following information. So we'd want to specify an origin domain name. So when we click in here, notice that we have our S3 buckets and our Elastic Load Balancer. I'm going to go ahead and select Essentials Bucket. We can specify the path within the bucket, and we can also select to restrict access to that bucket as well. So the settings related to CloudFront are somewhat advanced, so we won't go through all of these options. I just wanted to, at the very least, to explain how it's able to pull data from our S3 bucket. We can also specify default cache behavior. Now, you may have heard the term cache before, particularly with your web browser. Someone may tell you to clear the cache. A cache is essentially a place in memory or on disk that holds information. Typically, it's the information that's been downloaded to your computer when you access a web page, so that the next time you access that web page, the page will load faster because the data is saved in your cache. The CloudFront cache is where the data is temporarily stored on the edge location. So when someone goes to access data that's stored on a CloudFront edge location, it is retrieved from that cache. But again, we're not going to go through all of these settings. But you can see that these default settings forward all requests that use the CloudFront URL for your distribution to the S3 bucket that you specified here. It'll also allow HTTP and HTTPS access to our objects, and it will cache our objects at the edge locations for a period of 24 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. And under the distribution settings, we can set things like price class, which sets the maximum price that we want to pay for CloudFront services. Now note by default that CloudFront does serve your objects from edgefront locations that are in all CloudFront regions. So if we click this drop-down list, you can specify if you only want to serve that data from specific locations. You can use alternate domain names or what we call CNAMEs. CNAMEs are like an alias that you would use. So as an example, you could use an address like example.com/images/image.jpg versus using this default CloudFront address. So it just gives you an easier to remember domain name, similar to how we created alias records in Route 53, but using what's called a CNAME record instead. So under the distribution state, we would need to choose enable. So we're going to scroll down and see enable is selected here, and then we would click create distribution. Now I'm not actually going to create this distribution. At this time, we just wanted to walk through those settings. But if you were creating this distribution, any domain names that you wanted to configure as alternates or as CNAMEs, you would need to make sure that they are already configured within Route 53. So these are abbreviated instructions. If you want more information about the full list of configuration options related to CloudFront, feel free to visit this link. So now we're going to go ahead and summarize. So what does CloudFront do? CloudFront is an AWS service that replicates data, video, and applications around the world to reduce latency so that access to the resources is fastest for the people who will use the data the most. So essentially, CloudFront is able to take the data that you want your users to be able to access and replicate it to edge locations that are in various places around the world, so that when users go to access that data, that they experience the least possible amount of latency. You can replicate to all CloudFront edge locations, or you can select specific CloudFront locations based on major geographical areas. If the data that the user wants to access is already in the edge location, it's immediately served and presented to the user. If not, then that data is retrieved from the source and replicated to the CloudFront edge location, so that subsequent access by users is then presented with the least possible amount of latency. So that concludes our overview of CloudFront. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.